I'm hopeful that in the wake of all of this destruction, these natural disasters will spur communities to come together to proactively create action plans to help fight and mitigate the harm caused by these tragedies. As these fires showed, firefighters cannot be everywhere at once. So, equipping citizens in the neighborhood with more tools to help protect their communities would be a proactive step.
Welcome to Sustainability Leaders. I'm Michael Torrance, Chief Sustainability Officer at BMO. On this show, we will talk with leading sustainability practitioners from the corporate, investor, academic, and NGO communities to explore how this rapidly evolving field of sustainability is impacting global investment, business practices, and our world.
The views expressed here are those of the participants and not those of Bank of Montreal, its affiliates, or subsidiaries.
Hi, I'm Caroline Donlin, Managing Director and Head of Engineering and Construction at BMO. And in this episode, we're diving into a critical topic, the rebuilding efforts in Southern California following the devastating wildfires in January 2025. Today, we're joined by Veronica Luttrell, ECC Operations Planner. ECC is a leading construction company that delivers design, build, construction, environmental remediation, disaster response, energy, munitions response, and international development services. We'll discuss the challenges, strategies, and the incredible efforts being made to rebuild these communities and restore hope to the families and businesses affected. Veronica, thanks so much for joining us today.
Great. Thank you, Caroline. I'm excited to be here.
I've been looking forward to this conversation. And Veronica, I wanted to see if you could start by telling us a bit more about ECC and your role in the construction, remediation, and disaster response industries.
Absolutely. So this is an exciting year for ECC as we are celebrating our 40th anniversary. ECC is an employee-owned company and has performed more than $13 billion in revenue in about 37 countries around the globe. So we have professionals located in offices throughout North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Africa. This big milestone, we are taking the time company-wide this year to highlight ECC's cultural values. So what I've enjoyed most about ECC is how we are committed to safety, security, and wellness of our people and their families, and we love to embrace healthy habits and behaviors. We love to conduct our work in a manner that protects people, property, and the environment, while we also believe in diversity. That being said, I've been with ECC for 15 years now and have had the opportunity to be involved in all of those divisions mentioned previously as construction, munitions removal, environmental remediation, renewable energy, and disaster response projects. I have a degree in environmental science with a minor in biology, and it's been an amazing journey career-wise so far. I'm based out of our Hawaii location, so I'm currently on Oahu, but I primarily focus on the Pacific region. However, work does call me to places as far out as Germany or Virginia or California, so it's been quite the travel journey.
Veronica, that sounds absolutely incredible. I think you're living the dream of many of us to get to make such an incredible impact as well as live in Hawaii. So narrowing in a little bit on the Los Angeles wildfires of January of 2025, which were absolutely devastating. What are some of the immediate challenges that you and your team face when responding to the crisis, and how did it evolve as the crisis evolved?
You know, when responding to a wildfire debris cleanup, an immediate challenge is bringing the workforce together in a very short time. Debris removal requires significant resources and coordination, and generally there's no prediction that can tell us when a disaster is going to hit. So all we can do is to be prepared and have resources lined up who are aware that they may be called on a short notice to be dispatched to support. So ECC has a network who are ready to respond to natural disasters and contingency situations. So we do have experienced teams in place that are ready to deploy anywhere where a disaster may be being unfolded. And this basically helps fast track and streamline our mobilization. So we do have multidisciplined employees that are cross-trained and FEMA certified trained who are able to work in unison to hit the ground running and accomplish objectives quickly. So we are experienced with numerous agencies and clients from the federal to county level in the US and abroad. And so that's probably the one of the biggest challenges is just trying to gather all of required resources again in very, very short time.
Specifically with Los Angeles, it being so front and center on the news for many of us, was the response in line with other natural disasters, or was the response greater because people were just seeing the impact of it in such real time?
It was, I would definitely say that it was bigger. It was by far, we were on the heels coming off of Hurricane Helene. Prior to that, we were wrapping up the cleanup of Lahaina. The fires that we are currently working on is by far the largest fire that I think in history anyone's really been part of. So it just is on a completely different scale. You know, you have about 10,000 parcels that are requiring some type of cleanup. And so, in order to help the community rebuild, there's a lot of logistics, a lot of coordination, a lot of sharing of resources that comes into play in order to pull it off. There's a lot of data that comes in. There's a lot of personnel that come in. I mean, it's just like from the beginning to the end, it's a very, very constant movement of just continuing to keep the work flowing in a very safe and efficient manner.
That sounds incredible. And like a lot of really hard work, making sure that you're getting employees from all over the world on the ground to be able to respond to a pretty dynamic situation. Once folks are there and engaged, what are some of the challenges that often arise as you kind of move into the longer term remediation?
I would say right off the bat, generally housing, there's been a few disasters where we've had to build what we call man camps, and they're just like temporary structures for folks to live in just because of the urgency of needing to be close to the fire impacted area. A lot of times, a lot of the lodging or hotels in close vicinities are either no longer existing or they are offered to the survivors, of course. So occasionally, lodging can be a little bit of a difficult challenge when we're bringing in mass amounts of workforce coming in. However, you know, we found various ways of getting around that, whether it be a little bit of a longer travel distance to get to where the fire impact zone is in order to do the work, or we have built temporary lodging structures that will accommodate a large amount of people in order to be able to sleep, rest, and have showers and have a dining facility. So when I talk about temporary lodging, I'm talking like very, very large camps that, you know, that get built within a very short time in order to help that relief of trying to figure out where to place people in order to get everyone working.
That sounds pretty different from your typical construction project that you may be working on. As a company with expertise in environmental remediation, how do you approach restoring land and infrastructure that has been heavily impacted by fire damage?
So what we would do is we would prioritize like a multi-step approach focusing on safety, debris removal, soil quality assessment. And initially what we would do is we would do an assessment on all of the damage and then focus on what that long-term restoration process would look like. So once debris removal has been completed, an environmental team would go out and collect soil samples that would be analyzed to determine the extent of contamination from ash and soot and other fire-related debris. So once the analysis has been received, that team would then determine if soil removal would need to be conducted. So once a fire has come through, a fire can introduce contaminants into the soil that includes heavy metal, hydrocarbons, and other pollutants from burning vegetation, buildings, and debris. So by removing that topsoil, it helps eliminate or reduce the exposure to those contaminants, making it safer for people and improving the quality of soil for future use as well. So the remediation process would also involve collaboration with various stakeholders as well. So that would include government agencies and local communities and other organizations. Another little tidbit about ECC is that we began as an environmental cleanup company. So we are not only remediating the environment, but we also provide solutions that help prevent environmental damage and defend against natural catastrophes. So that way we can protect and restore and preserve the land for future generations.
How long would a typical plot take to clear?
So it generally takes about 2 days. It could be, depending on the size of the footprint, it could, on average, I would say about 2 days. And that's with when you're first approaching a property that has many different debris streams. An assessment is first done on what is physically there, and then an assessment is done on trees, whether a tree is hazardous or not. And then there's an asbestos assessment that's done. So once the results come back from the asbestos assessment, if it's positive, then we send an asbestos abatement team that goes in and they essentially abate the material. And once that's been cleared of there's no more abatement remaining, a debris removal will then move in and will segregate the different debris streams, such as metal and concrete and ash and contaminated soil. So those will go off to different facilities. And then once that's done, the hazard trees, if there are any remaining on the property, those will get removed. And then at some point, it gets turned over to the county, in which the county turns it around and turns it over to the homeowner in order for them to begin the rebuilding process. So there's a lot of steps in as far as the work goes, and there's always different. Some steps take a little bit longer to achieve. For example, if a home was older, there could potentially be a lot more asbestos to clean up and abate.
I'm curious, as you think about this fire today versus a fire 20 years ago, how has the focus on sustainable practices changed or not changed?
In recent years that we really have started encountering more has been solar panels and EV batteries, and those type of items have to be disposed of in a certain manner. Fires from a long time ago, we didn't have electric cars and we didn't have solar energy. Well, we did have solar energy, but not to the point to where we're at now, where it's a lot more common. And so those are items, power walls that we encounter. A lot of that stuff cannot just be disposed of. It has to be handled as if it's hazardous material. So we have to be really careful because some of the stuff still has energy that could combust. And so we have special teams that handle our hazardous household material, and they fall into that category where they get dispatched. So while asbestos, we may not be encountering that more than what was in the past, we now have an uprise of other material that is now starting to show up that we deal with in a special way.
Can you discuss the collaborative efforts between the public and private sectors that are helping to expedite the recovery process in Southern California?
Sure, absolutely. There's been great partnership between the public and private sectors with this recovery process. I'm always amazed because it takes a lot of collaboration, a lot of meetings with all agencies, and both of the sectors have been engaged from the beginning with services that include anywhere from like financial assistance to workforce support to streamlining processes like contractor licensing to rebuild homes and businesses. The state agencies have been working with the federal partners to address housing needs, especially for vulnerable populations. I do know that the private sectors have been leading initiatives that helped launch some small business relief funds to help direct financial support to affected businesses and nonprofits. So these community organizations, they play a huge role in shortening the recovery time by organizing community members and building social capital and creating these collaboratives. With the public and private sectors, the resource sharing and the collaboration is so important.
That's wonderful that the public and private sectors are able to unite during challenging times. As a sidebar, I just have to ask, it must be really tough cleaning up where someone lived and spent their life and they have nothing really left that was in their house. I mean, was that difficult when you first started doing this type of remediation work, or is it difficult for people that are on site to think through that?
It's incredibly difficult. What a great question. When I think about it, the reason why I do this work is, even though we are working 7 days a week and very long hours every day, we have to physically have calendars, right? Like as many places on the walls as possible, because we don't have any distinction between what day it is. And we are constantly asking each other, what day is it? What day is it? But it's besides all of that, this work is so rewarding because we are doing something that directly is impacting somebody and their family and their life. And it is incredibly hard speaking to some of these homeowners. And a lot of homeowners, they want to be present. We have a majority of homeowners for this fire being present for their cleanup. And, we've been able to find things for them. Like the other day, a badge was found that we were able to recover and give to the homeowner. Another homeowner had lost their decorative plate collection, and we were able to find some of that was not broken, which I think is insane because of the destruction that occurred on that property. And to know that we were able to recover 2 of her plates. And this means a whole lot to a lot of these homeowners to be able to still have something, but being able to be with these homeowners and where they've lost so much, it always impacts all of us because it never gets easier. It doesn't get easier. You can't quite say that, you can relate unless you have been in their shoes. And all we can do is just try to take care of their property in the most delicate way.
Absolutely incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Shifting gears a little bit and looking ahead, how do you see the future of resilient community development in areas prone to natural disasters? And what do you think businesses like ours play in shaping that future?
Well, I'm hopeful that in the wake of all of this destruction, these natural disasters will spur communities to come together to proactively create action plans to help fight and mitigate the harm caused by these tragedies. As these fires showed, firefighters cannot be everywhere at once. So, equipping citizens in the neighborhood with more tools to help protect their communities would be a proactive step. Providing communities with capital and assistance will be imperative to creating improved, resilient neighborhoods. As Californians have seen over the past 7 to 8 years, fires continue to impact communities all over the state. So the state of California has the 5th largest economy in the world and also has some of the most progressive policies in our country. Within this framework, I'm quite hopeful that government leaders and business leaders will allow communities to rebuild in a manner that honors their neighborhood's history while also creating infrastructure that is capable of withstanding these increasingly destructive fires. My only wish is that those that have lost everything, that they just continue to look forward to rebuilding and just hoping that they get some type of solace from everything and gets to restart in a better, if not safer way.
That wraps up today's conversation on the challenges and opportunities in rebuilding communities after the Los Angeles wildfires. Veronica, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and vision for the future of Southern California.
Thanks for listening to Sustainability Leaders. This podcast is presented by BMO. You can find our show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. Press the follow button if you want to get notified when new episodes are published. We value your input, so please leave a rating, review, and any feedback that you might have, or visit us at bmo.com/sustainability leaders. Our show and resources are produced with support from BMO's marketing team and Puddle Creative. Until next time, thanks for listening and have a great week.
For BMO disclosures, please visit bmocm.com/podcast/disclaimer.